the factory that sells security. So you want to own a desalination plant. You take water from an ocean that can never run dry, remove the salt, and sell the one product every city must buy. It sounds like the closest thing infrastructure has to guaranteed demand. But one of the world's largest desalination plants produced zero water in a recent year, and its operator could still be paid. In Victoria, Australia, a private consortium built a desalination system capable of supplying 150 billion litres of water a year. The project required $3.5 billion Australian dollars of capital investment. During the 2024-25 supply period, it produced 0 litres, yet under its public-private contract, the state still owed water security payments as long as the plant remained capable of delivering water to the required standard. That sounds absurd until you understand what the customer was actually buying. Now travel to Israel. The Sorek B project offered desalinated water at approximately 40 US cents per cubic meter. In California, water from the Carlsbad desalination plant cost about $3,500 per acre-foot in fiscal year 2025, roughly $2.84 per cubic meter. Both plants use reverse osmosis. Both turn seawater into drinking water, yet one quoted unit price is about 7 times the other. If the raw material is free, the technology is similar, and every customer needs the product, why can the price vary by 7 times? And how can producing no water still create revenue? The answer is the difference between owning a water factory and owning a bankable promise. That promise must survive electricity shocks, membrane failure, bad source water, environmental restrictions, political pressure, and decades of debt payments. Because the economics of desalination are not controlled by how much ocean surrounds the plant. They are controlled by what sits between the ocean and a customer legally required to pay. Desalination is not one business. Desalination means removing dissolved salts from water. But seawater, brackish water, and thermal plants are different businesses. Brackish water needs less pressure, but can leave an inland owner with no cheap place to discharge brine. Thermal plants use heat and can work beside power generation, but are generally more energy intensive. For a modern coastal plant, the dominant model is seawater reverse osmosis. High-pressure pumps force pretreated seawater against semi-permeable membranes. Water molecules pass through. Most dissolved salts do not. The result is a stream of fresh permeate and a second stream of concentrated brine. But even within reverse osmosis, the owner's business model can change completely. A municipality may own the plant, a contractor may only design and build it, or a private consortium may finance and operate it for 25 or 30 years before transferring it to the government. A desalination plant is rarely a normal factory searching for customers every month. It is usually a long-term infrastructure contract with a very complicated machine attached to it. That distinction matters because drinking water has no useful spot market. You cannot produce an extra 50 million gallons today and find a new city tomorrow. Water is heavy, regulated, and trapped inside pipelines. Your true market may be one utility at the end of one pipe. Before understanding the contract, however, you need to understand what the owner is actually building. What you are really buying. The reverse osmosis building is only the center of the system. First comes the intake. An open ocean intake may draw enormous volumes through screens. A subsurface intake can pull seawater through sand beneath the ocean floor, reducing harm to marine organisms and improving source water quality. But it may cost far more and may not work at every site. Next comes pretreatment. Seawater carries algae, sediment, microbes, organic material, and tiny organisms. These must be removed before they reach the membranes. If pretreatment fails, the most valuable equipment in the plant begins to foul. High-pressure pumps then push the clean seawater through reverse osmosis trains. Energy recovery devices capture pressure from the outgoing brine and feed part of it back into the process. The fresh water still needs remineralization, chemical adjustment, disinfection, and testing before it can enter a drinking water network. Finally, the water needs storage, pumping, and a pipeline to reach the utility network. The brine needs a permitted discharge system. The entire plant needs a large and reliable electricity connection. You are not buying a row of membranes. You are buying an intake, a chemical treatment system, a high-pressure power load, a laboratory, a brine outfall, and a pipeline, all of which must work before 1 liter becomes billable. This is why a perfect treatment site can still be a terrible financial site. The land may be cheap, but far from the grid. The ocean conditions may be ideal, but the municipal network may be 20 miles away. The plant may share an old power station intake, reducing construction cost, only to face new environmental rules that require a complete redesign. And every additional structure creates another permit, contractor, failure point, and schedule risk. The free raw material illusion. The ocean does not send an invoice. That does not make seawater free. The owner pays to reach it, screen it, pump it, clean it, pressurize it, stabilize it, and discharge what remains. At around 50% recovery, a plant must process roughly 2 cubic meters of seawater to produce 1 cubic meter of fresh water. The exact ratio changes with salinity, temperature, and design, but the ownership lesson stays the same. Half of what enters the reverse osmosis stage may leave as concentrated brine. The proposed Huntington Beach project in California showed the scale clearly. Its design would have drawn up to 106.7 million gallons of seawater a day to produce up to 50 million gallons of drinking water. It was not only a 50 million gallon water factory. It was a 100 million gallon intake and discharge operation. The owner earns money on the fresh half, but must finance and permit the movement of both halves. Revenue follows the product water. Much of the infrastructure follows the feed water. A plant beside an existing outfall, cheap power, and a nearby customer has a different cost base from one requiring subsurface wells, tunnels, new transmission lines, and miles of pipeline. The water may be identical. The infrastructure beneath its price is not. Then comes the largest variable cost, the electricity inside every glass. Seawater creates osmotic pressure. The plant must overcome it with mechanical pressure, and that physical requirement cannot be negotiated away. Modern membranes and energy recovery devices have reduced electricity use dramatically, but they have not removed it. The US Department of Energy used approximately 2.7 kilowatt-hours per cubic meter for the reverse osmosis stage at Carlsbad as a state-of-the-art reference. A broader modern plant, including intake, pretreatment, post-treatment, and delivery pumping, can consume more. Now multiply that small number by tens of millions of cubic meters. A plant producing 65 million cubic meters annually at 3.5 kilowatt-hours per cubic meter consumes about 228 million kilowatt-hours. At 9 cents per kilowatt-hour, the electricity bill is roughly $20.5 million. At 14 cents, it exceeds 31 million. The plant has not produced 1 extra liter. More than $10 million of annual margin has simply disappeared. Every glass of desalinated water contains a small slice of an electricity contract. If the water price is fixed while the power price floats, the owner is not only selling water. This is why strong projects index part of the water tariff to electricity, secure long-term power arrangements, or pass defined energy costs to the buyer. But even a pass-through can create political risk. Consumers do not read the project finance model. They see a rising water bill. If a plant becomes associated with expensive water, pressure grows to renegotiate, reduce purchases, or replace future capacity with conservation and recycling. Cheap renewable power helps, but a plant cannot stop every time electricity prices rise without affecting production commitments, membrane health, and debt service. And that water contract is the real beginning of the business. The customer before the concrete. A desalination plant can take years to permit, finance, and build. Lenders will not fund it because a coastal city might need water someday. They want an off-taker with strong credit and a legal obligation to pay. The contract defines capacity, minimum purchases, water quality, delivery pressure, power adjustments, inflation indexing, maintenance windows, and penalties. It also determines who carries demand risk. In a take-or-pay structure, the utility commits to a minimum volume. In an availability structure, it pays for readiness plus water used. In a purely volumetric structure, the owner is paid only for accepted water. That model sounds simple. It can be deadly when rainfall returns. Reservoir water may become cheaper. Conservation, recycling, or a new pipeline may reduce demand. The desalination plant still owes wages, maintenance, insurance, and debt service. Drought creates the need for a desalination plant. Rain reveals whether its contract is strong. The dangerous year is not always the year the reservoirs are empty. It may be the year they refill and the customer no longer wants your expensive water. This creates the central ownership paradox. The public customer wants flexibility to buy less water. The private owner and its lenders want certainty that someone will keep paying. The final contract decides who wins that negotiation. The billion-dollar contract at Carlsbad. The Carlsbad Desalination Project in Southern California cost approximately $1 billion, including the plant, pipeline, financing costs, and system modifications. It can provide about 50 million gallons a day. But the critical asset was not the membrane technology. It was the 30-year water purchase agreement with the San Diego County Water Authority. The agreement established minimum annual demand of 48,000 acre-feet against capacity of about 56,000. That commitment made large-scale financing possible. The authority bought a local supply designed to operate through changing weather. In fiscal year 2025, the reported plant water price was about $3,500 per acre-foot. That was far above the lowest international desalination bids. But San Diego was not purchasing a global commodity at the factory gate. Its price reflected local construction, finance, power, environmental rules, pipelines, and a high-cost market. The cheapest desalinated water in the world cannot serve San Diego if it is produced in Israel. Water is too heavy to ship like oil. The buyer pays for the cheapest dependable molecule that can reach the local pipe under local rules. Carlsbad also exposes the value of timing. The project required years of planning and permitting before construction. During development, the owner spends money without producing water. If approval fails, engineering reports and legal work cannot be sold to another city like unused machinery. They are site-specific sunk costs. The California Coastal Commission recommended denial of the separate proposed Huntington Beach plant in 2022. That design targeted the same 50 million gallon daily output, but faced questions around need, environmental impact, affordability, and site risk. One coastal megaproject became operating infrastructure. Another never reached construction. The difference was the ability to align permits, politics, demand, finance, and design at the same time. The plant that earned while idle now returned to Victoria. The Wonthaggi Desalination Project was built after a severe drought to give Melbourne a water source independent of rainfall. Its contract separated two forms of payment. The security element paid for the plant's ability to supply up to 150 gigaliters a year at the required quality. The usage element related to water actually ordered and delivered. In 2024-25, the plant produced 0 gigaliters, but the government's own financial reporting still described an obligation to make water security payments provided the facility was maintained to the appropriate standard. The following year, 50 gigaliters were ordered. From the public's perspective, paying for an idle plant can look wasteful. From the owner's perspective, readiness is the product. A fire station is not worthless because no building burned today. The contract pays to keep the option alive. From the public's perspective, paying for an idle plant can look wasteful. From the owner's perspective, readiness is the product. A fire station is not worthless because no building burned today. The contract pays to keep the option alive. This is the purest version of desalination economics. The plant is insurance against water shortage, and insurance has value before the claim. But availability revenue is not free profit. The plant must remain capable of starting, meeting output tests, maintaining water quality, and surviving inspections. Failure can reduce payments. Equipment ages while idle. Membranes need preservation. Pumps need maintenance. Staff must remain available. And every permit stays active. An idle plant can therefore earn revenue and still consume cash. The owner's margin is the difference between the availability payment and the cost of preserving real testable readiness. Now we can build a transparent model, the 200,000 cubic meter plant. Imagine a privately financed seawater reverse osmosis plant capable of producing 200,000 cubic meters a day, just over 50 million gallons. Assume total development and construction cost of $750 million. That includes development, marine works, treatment equipment, grid connection, pipeline contribution, finance, and contingency. Finance it with $525 million of debt and $225 million of equity. At 5.5% over 25 years, annual debt service is approximately $39 million. At 90% utilization, the plant sells 65.7 million cubic meters a year. Assume a blended contract price of $1.80 per cubic meter. Annual revenue reaches about $118 million. Now subtract the operating machine. Electricity at 3.5 kilowatt-hours per cubic meter and 9 cents per kilowatt-hour costs roughly $20.7 million. Chemicals, filters, laboratory testing, and membrane replacement reserves cost $13 million. Labor and plant management cost $9 million. Mechanical maintenance and spare parts cost $10 million. Intake, outfall, pipeline, and environmental monitoring cost $6 million. Insurance, administration, land, and other overhead cost $7 million. Total cash operating cost is approximately $65.7 million. Operating cash flow before debt service is about $52.6 million. After $39 million of debt service, approximately $13.6 million remains before tax and major unexpected capital work. On $225 million of equity, that is a cash yield of roughly 6%. The plant sells more than $100 million of water, yet the owner keeps only about $14 million before tax. A 5% mistake in construction cost, power pricing, or availability can consume years of equity returns. This is an illustrative model, not a forecast for a specific plant. Now stress it. Suppose utilization falls from 90 to 70% because the customer orders less water and the contract contains no full capacity payment. Annual output falls to 51.1 million cubic meters. At the same price, revenue falls to about $92 million. Energy and chemical costs decline, but staff, maintenance, compliance, and debt do not fall in proportion. Assume operating cost falls to $56 million. Operating cash flow becomes $36 million, less than the $39 million debt payment. At 70% utilization, the plant can produce perfectly clean water and still fail to cover its financing. Technical success does not guarantee financial survival. Now restore 90% utilization but raise electricity from 9 to 14 cents per kilowatt hour. Power cost rises by more than $11 million. Most of the owner's cash flow disappears. An intake problem that reduces saleable output while raising repair cost can push it into a debt service problem without any shortage of seawater. The ocean eliminates feedstock scarcity. It does not eliminate demand risk, power risk, construction risk, or debt. Desalination solves the city's water volatility, by concentrating a different set of risks inside the owner's balance sheet. There is one more danger. Water that fails specification may produce no revenue. The plant can spend electricity, chemicals, and labor. The owner has paid to manufacture a product the utility can refuse. Quality assurance protects billable output. The permit is part of the machine. A desalination owner does not simply need permission to build on land. The project may require approvals for coastal development, intake, brine discharge, drinking water quality, pipelines, power, and habitat mitigation. At 50% recovery, the rejected stream can approach twice the intake salinity before mixing. Diffusers, blending, outfall location, currents, and discharge velocity determine how quickly it disperses. Regulators may require monitoring, mitigation, or redesign. This makes development capital unusually risky. A developer can spend years proving technical feasibility while the region's water outlook changes. If conservation succeeds or a cheaper recycling project emerges, the political need for desalination may weaken before the permit arrives. If a drought worsens, urgency may increase, but public urgency does not automatically shorten every environmental review. The owner must keep land rights, studies, and commercial negotiations alive throughout. That is why a permitted site with a signed offtake agreement can be worth more than a partially built treatment building. Concrete can be financed. An unresolved public mandate cannot. Where the margin really moves, the developer assembles the project. The contractor builds it. Suppliers sell equipment. The operator earns for availability. The lender receives interest. The equity owner gets whatever remains after operating costs and debt. Environmental protection is not a line item added after engineering. Intake and brine rules can change the intake, the recovery rate, the outfall, the energy use, the construction cost, and ultimately the water price. A $750 million plant that overruns by 15% needs another $112.5 million. If the water tariff was fixed before construction, the owner may be unable to recover that cost. Delays are even worse. The party selling water is not automatically the party earning the safest return. In project finance, the lender may have the strongest claim, the contractor may lock in its margin, and the equity owner gets whatever remains after everyone else is paid. Interest accumulates while revenue waits. Contractors submit claims. Permits may expire. The customer may impose damages for late delivery. By opening day, years of equity return may already be consumed. The ownership traps. The first trap is building for drought demand without a dry year independent contract. If rainfall can eliminate purchases, debt must not depend on maximum production. The second trap is comparing global water prices without comparing the projects beneath them. 40-cent water from a giant optimized plant with low-cost finance cannot be copied automatically in a high-cost coastal city. The third trap is treating electricity as an operating detail. Power pricing, indexation, and availability can decide the entire equity return. The fourth trap is underestimating intake and outfall infrastructure. The membrane building may be the technological center, but marine works and pipelines can dominate cost and permitting. The fifth trap is assuming every liter produced becomes a liter sold. Maintenance, fouling, startup losses, cleaning, quality failures, and delivery constraints reduce billable output. The sixth trap is using average capacity when the contract demands peak reliability. A plant can average high availability and still face penalties if it fails during the exact month the utility needs it. The seventh trap is ignoring major replacement capital. Pumps, pressure vessels, membranes, electrical equipment, coatings, and marine structures do not last forever. A low operating cost estimate that excludes life cycle replacement is not a true cost. The eighth trap is taking construction risk with too little contingency. Tunnels, offshore works, geology, corrosion, and grid upgrades can turn small assumptions into large claims. The ninth trap is believing water need eliminates political risk. The best owner begins by deciding which risks can move to contractors, lenders, power suppliers, and the buyer, and which risks remain trapped inside the project company. Everyone supports reliable water, fewer support higher bills, marine impact, or payments while the plant is idle. The final trap is confusing an essential service with a profitable asset. Hospitals are essential. Airlines are essential. Electricity is essential. Essential demand does not guarantee a good contract or a good capital structure. The ownership verdict. A strong owner secures the customer before final design. They choose a site by considering intake, outfall, power, pipeline distance, source water quality, and permitting together. They lock construction obligations into enforceable completion and performance guarantees. They match debt service to conservative production, not maximum nameplate capacity. They index the tariff to power and inflation where possible. They maintain reserves for membranes, pumps, marine works, and major repairs. They prove environmental compliance continuously. And they structure capacity or minimum purchase payments so a wet year does not become a financial drought. A weak owner buys the fantasy of unlimited feedstock. They see free seawater and guaranteed human thirst. They copy a low international tariff without copying the cheap power, finance, geology, scale, or public support behind it. They assume the plant will run at 95% from year one. They fix the water price and leave electricity floating. They treat the intake as a pipe, the outfall as a permit, and the customer as permanent. Then construction is delayed. Interest accumulates. The power price rises. Algae fouls the pretreatment system. The plant misses its availability test. Rain fills the reservoirs. And the utility discovers that the most expensive water in its portfolio is the easiest water not to order. The opening mystery now has a complete answer. Sorec's price reflected its scale, finance, energy, design, competition, and contract. Carlsbad financed a specific $1 billion local supply system under California conditions. Victoria could pay at zero production, because the customer purchased readiness, not only liters. The hidden profit engine is therefore not salt removal. It is risk allocation. The intake determines what enters. A great desalination plant does not merely make water during a drought. It makes predictable cash flow through drought, rain, power shocks, maintenance cycles, and political change. Only partly. You are buying a coastal infrastructure concession, a long-duration energy exposure, a regulated environmental system, and one customer's promise to pay for water security. In the strongest model, the utility pays for availability, energy risk is shared, construction is controlled, and the plant can service debt even when water orders fall. In the weakest model, the owner pays for the plant every day and gets paid only when the weather makes the customer thirsty. The ocean provides the raw material. The membranes create the water, but the contract creates the asset. And in desalination, the most valuable thing flowing through the plant may never be water. It may be certainty.